Stoughton Planning Board will meet on Thursday, January 26th at 7 p.m. at the Stoughton Town Hall, 3rd floor, Great Hall, 10 Pearl Street, Stoughton, Mass., relative to the following agenda items. And first item is Chairman's comments. At this point in time, I have no comments. Does anybody on the board have any comments for tonight's meeting?
No.
No? Okay. I am going to take the agenda out of order tonight. I'm going to go to item number 3. The fire station, which is a continued public hearing, will be held at the petition the applicant and the owner of Town of Stoughton, 10 Pearl Street, Stoughton, Mass., represented by Doro and Whittier Architects, 260 Merrimack Street, Newburyport, Mass., for site plan approval under Section 10.6, site plan approval of the Town of Stoughton zoning bylaws for the proposed construction of 25,200 square feet gross area, fire station and 31 parking spaces to be located at 400 Prospect Street. Assessors map 066 lots 217 and 218. Assessors map 077 lots 25 and 26, and assessors map 78 lots 001 and 002 in the residential B zoning district. My understanding is that this meeting will be continued until February 9th. So this meeting will not happen tonight. It will be continued to February 9th. Okay. Next item is item number 2 on the agenda. A continued public hearing will be held at the petition of applicant IV3 Stoughton Logistics Park, LLC, care of Tyler Mortis of Brookfield Properties, Meadowlands Plaza, Suite 301, East Rutherford, New Jersey, 07073, and owners TL Edwards, Inc. and Edwards Acquisition, LLC of 100 Wales Ave, Avon, Mass., JF White Contracting Company of 56 Old Page Street, Stoughton, Mass., represented by Langen Engineering and Environmental Services of 100 Cambridge Street, Suite 1310, Boston, Mass., for site plan approval under Section 10.6, site plan approval of the Town of Stoughton zoning bylaws and certain special permits of Section 6.1 off-street parking and loading Section 6.4.4.1 vegetated standards for the proposed development of 3 industrial warehouse buildings to be located at 0 Maple Street, Assessors map 093, lot 011, 45 Maple Street, Assessors map 093, lot 012, 0 Turnpike Street, Assessors map 093, and lot 014, 1157-1158 Turnpike Street, Assessors map 093, and lot 016, 0 Page Street, Assessors map 093, lot 017, 162 Page Street, Assessors map 094, lot 050, 56 Old Page Street, Assessors map 093, 007, and the I Industrial District. Can I have the owner representatives and whoever else would like to speak, please come up.
Mark, you have our presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm R.J. Lyman at Dane Torpy in Boston, representing the applicant. With me is Hillary Holmes from Langen Engineering. As the evening goes on, we'll have appropriate other members of our team come up and we'll introduce them as they come along, if that's okay with you. We were last in front of you, as you may recall, on the 10th of November last year. It was a long time ago. We've done a lot of work since then, both ourselves, with your and other town staff, and with the chairman as well. And we appreciate all the work that Mark and Craig and a whole host of folks on the city town staff and the chairman and others from other boards have done. And we hope that what you'll see tonight has responded to questions and concerns that you've heard from your peer reviewers and you've had yourselves, and then a whole host of issues that the chairman and others helpfully raised for us to make sure we made appropriate adjustments so that we can make sure that this project brings its benefits and minimizes its detriments. So with that, as I'm stalling for time, with the presentation coming up, Mark, if you ask a man over 35 to turn on a television, it's usually a momentous occasion. That's great, thank you. All right. Oh, don't worry. I have a 30-year-old son who happens to be a software engineer or whatever he does. It's very complicated and interesting. It seems to pay him decently. When he comes home, his mother and I make him reboot our computers, so we can't criticize it all. So why don't we go ahead, Mark? There's just a quick synopsis of our team. All of those folks and a couple of others are here tonight, but as I said, we'll introduce folks as they come up. Most importantly, though, will now Tyler Mortis and Lisa Ling from Brookfield. They're the company we are all representing. Next slide would be great. No, that's quite all right. So what we're going to just cover tonight, in addition to getting into the details of things, is just quickly, it's been a little while since you've heard from us, so it may be familiar, so we won't spend a lot of time on just a project overview. But then on the update, we'll run through the town permit process, just so you can see where we are with other boards and commissions and also with your own peer reviewers. And then we'll get into the meat of it with the site plan and the traffic. As we told you before, and I think it doesn't necessarily determine your particular role in this, but it is nevertheless, I think, in everybody's interest to see generally both the construction period jobs, but more importantly, the long-run fiscal benefits to the town. These types of uses, these logistics facilities, other than the traffic they generate, which we know we need to address, and we'll talk about that. The only other real impact they tend to have on municipalities is, in fact, the positive property tax base. They don't drive any school children or any other demands on public services. They're pretty well self-contained. Next slide. This is the site today. As everyone, I think, knows from driving past it and seeing it, while Terry Edwards runs a highly professional operation, it's a significantly manipulated and degraded site. And so an ideal one from our perspective for redevelopment. Next slide. This is an overview of, is the permit thing coming up next? I thought.
Yeah, the permits.
That's next, okay, I apologize, I thought it was earlier. So this gives you an overview. I won't dwell on this now, except to make one notation, and then when Hillary's speaking, she could either come back to this one or go ahead. But you'll see in the southeast corner more green than you would have seen before. We'll talk about that as a particularly prominent aspect of what you can see on the site plan here. There's a bunch of other stuff that Hillary will go through that have been changed and that will be, I think, useful for you to hear about both on and off site. Next slide. So then finally, this is the last you have to hear from me for a while. So as you can see, we've been in front of the Conservation Commission 3 times, including tonight. We're on with them at 7 o'clock as well, but we're 6th on the agenda there. So hopefully, from everybody's perspective, we won't have problems scooting downstairs. You can see, there you are, and the ZBA we went to, and they granted the variance for height and the special permit for the 3 buildings on a single lot. A little bit more, because this is your work, Mark. We don't want to skip over that. So you'll see here, I don't think you need to, if you want to, it's fine, but you don't need to digest the individual details. The point is, we have been in a continuous, and I think I can safely say, from our perspective, and I hope from the town's perspective, very constructive dialogue, both with your own staff and with outside peer reviewers, and we really appreciate all that. So with that, next slide, and now Hillary can, okay, so Hillary Holmes from Langen.
Good evening, Hillary Holmes from Langen. I just have my screen up in front of me because my vision isn't quite what it used to be, so I was a little concerned I wouldn't be able to read the screen, but just, this is our site plan, and we just wanted to highlight some key areas on our site as well as things that have changed since we were before you last. So, oh, yeah, sorry. Absolutely. So this is our site plan. We just want to go through some key items on the site and things that have changed since we were before you last. So you can see at the top of your page is Maple Street, you have Turnpike to your left, you have Page Street to your right, Route 24, and the IKEA site is down to your south. So we have, starting at Turnpike Street to the left, we have our employee-only access, and the truck access is limited by a height structure. We are proposing to mill and resurface along Turnpike Street in the area that we're widening. We're also proposing a 5-foot wide sidewalk that will pick up where the current sidewalk ends, just to the sort of right where the high voltage lines are, closer to Maple Street, and it will continue along our frontage along Turnpike Street and end before the aggregate industry site. We do have, in addition to the employee-only access, we have a separate emergency-only automatic gate access, which would be coordinated with emergency services to make sure that they have access through a gate via fob or a PIN code. Then if we look towards sort of the other side of the site on the Page Street side to your right, in terms of work that we've done in coordination with the traffic peer reviewer, as well as the town engineering department. We're going to touch on these in more detail a little bit later, but I'll just give you a brief kind of overview. We're proposing to mill and resurface Page Street from Turnpike Street all the way down to the town line, the Avon-Stoughton town line. We're also proposing some traffic signal optimization at Turnpike Street and Page Street. Part of our work also will include pavement cores along Page Street from Turnpike Street down to the town line. That's work that is scheduled and will be conducted next week. And that's really to assess the existing condition of Page Street for the town. We also have at Page Street our main access road. So that's where we have employee and truck access, as well as we're proposing a dynamic flashing system. So all of the trucks will enter and exit on Page Street through the site access road that goes through the JF White site through a 60-foot right-of-way and then to our site. What else? So some of the site changes that happened that RJ had mentioned really happened sort of in the southeast corner of the site. There is a wetland, an isolated vegetated wetland to the southeast that was identified that we revised our site plan to accommodate. So we do propose a retaining wall to go around that wetland now. It did result in the removal of around 11 trailer parking spaces and some stormwater and utility revisions below grade. We also are proposing a wetland replication area that is directly to the right of that. So it's a green area that you see in the far southeast corner. That is to mitigate a low depression that is in the middle of the site near Building 1. It's around, I believe it's around 3,600 square feet. That's also an isolated vegetated wetland that we are planning to mitigate in compliance with the wetland bylaws at a 2-to-1 ratio. And the last piece is in terms of other traffic mitigation that we're proposing at Turnpike Street and Central Street. We are also proposing to do some intersection signal improvements as well there. Next slide. So there are a couple questions that came up at the last hearing when we were before you. One of them had to do with, how much existing vegetation is on site, how much we're removing, and then how much are we proposing? Because there is some clearing that we have to do on site in order to put in the development. So we took a closer look at that to provide the board with some numbers. So in terms of existing vegetation, we have on site around 11.6 acres. That's shown in the green shaded area. In terms of areas where vegetation and trees are to be removed, that's shown in orange. That's around 4.8 acres. So that leaves, once you take 11.6 minus 4.8, you have remaining 6.8 acres of existing vegetation. Layer that in with what we're proposing on site, where there's a quarry now, where there's no vegetation, we're adding 11.7 acres. So you take the 6.8 and the 11.7, our total vegetation for this site will be 18.5. So that is a significant improvement when you compare it to the existing vegetation that's out there. Our vegetation that we're proposing is going to be native flowers, vegetation, also adding in a considerable amount of trees too. Next slide.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, through you, I think you have a question.
My question is, in your analysis of the existing vegetation,
Mhm.
this is what you're proposing to install, have you done an analysis of broadleaf plants, large trees, maples, oaks, et cetera, versus conifers, which are native, and the net loss or gain of photosynthesis that your 18 acres will provide versus what exists now?
So we have not done any sort of greenhouse gas or analysis for photosynthesis. We do have some inventory numbers in terms of deciduous versus conifers that we can look at and get back to you with some more information on.
I think our goal is to certainly maintain and hopefully increase the photosynthesis is really the primary concern.
There's, yeah, no, as can Aunt Hillary get, nor can I, answer with specificity, but what I can tell you is that Sean and the others who've been working on this are focused not just on quantity, but also quality, and one of the sets of qualities is what kinds of profile the particular selection of species has, and hopefully. Understood. Understood. Thank you.
So.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, back to you.
Yes, I was going to add, Richard, thank you for bringing that up, because I was going to get a little bit more simplistic terms. One of the questions that had come up at our last meeting was the quantity of trees that you were removing as opposed to what you were putting in, which, if I remember correctly, you were removing some 750 trees, but you're only replicating about 500. So we were trying to come up with where that differences are and how that's working out. So I think Richard, what he's asking for, and if they get that analysis, I think that's going to get us, at least get us an understanding where we are at that point.
Okay, yes, and that's correct in terms of what you recall from last time. We are in the 700, 730, 740 range in terms of tree removal, and in terms of proposed trees, I can pull the exact number, but yeah.
It was in the 500 range,
Yeah,
if I remember.
exactly.
I remember it was
Yeah.
a percentage less than we were. right?
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely, yes.
Okay.
You can continue.
Other questions, Mr. Chairman? For you?
Yes, I'm quite thrilled about your calculating this out. In some of these non-vegetated areas that you're talking about vegetating, would you be introducing, like he suggested, native inkberry, winterberry, and then also, would you be introducing, we're not asking you to plant like 15 to 20-foot trees out there, but would you be introducing into it seedlings, maybe whips of red maple, oak, white oak, which are native to those wetland areas, so that if you could give us just kind of a display of how you're going to do that and the materials you're going to use.
Oh, you do, you're ready to?
I do have a slide. Mark, would you be able to navigate to slide page 26 in the presentation? It's like the third to last.
Let the record show that Mark can scroll through the slides now. He's very impressed.
Yes, this one. So this is a slide showing in terms of our breakdown for shade trees, evergreens, and some of our shrubs. So we have made a concerted effort to propose native plant species. You can see here in a little bit more detail some of the species that we are proposing. We're proposing red maple, October glory red maple, sugar maple, swamp white oak, a linden tree, serviceberry, honey locust, river birch. And then we do have some evergreen trees we are proposing in terms of cypress, red cedar, spruce, and white pine, which is native.
But we do understand, I think, the questions you collectively are asking, which is to take not just that information and say, here's the menu, but in fact, what is it that we're doing? And then analytically, I've not worked on a photosynthesis-based analysis, but I'm just a lawyer. But I've done plenty of GHG-based analyses, so I know there is a way to assign values. I assume the same thing's true. And so, yes, we will do that work.
So my comment would be that in wetlands areas where you're suggesting that you're going to do that, is that you would mimic a native wetlands area by putting in the inkberry and the winterberry and the swamp red maple and, native materials, which the state of Massachusetts has quite a list of,
As I understand, we were already planning on that, but we will give you the, I was going to, don't mean to be flip, but I was going to say, I don't know whether we can introduce all those things, but I doubt that we definitely can introduce our landscape architect. He'll be coming next time we see you with all that work done in advance.
So
it's quite exciting to move this way
Oh, yeah.
in these
Absolutely.
areas,
Yeah, I do want to stress that we do have, we do have buffer zone enhancement plantings in 3 areas that are near, within the wetland buffer areas that we have on site, where we are proposing some chokeberry, some serviceberry, some inkberry. So there are some enhancement plantings that are being proposed. And in terms of our wetland mitigation area, those are all wetland species plants.
Yes,
We're working, we have a consultant that we've been working with hand in hand to really make sure that we're proposing things that are going to thrive within the wetland mitigation zone.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Chairman. Good.
One.
Okay,
All right,
so we're back to slide 7, maybe.
I think so. Yes, we can go to the next one.
Okay.
So one of the outcomes from our ZBA hearing in terms of our approval and our terms of conditions, we're required as part of our plan development to have 10% common land space. And one of our conditions was to work on, with the town, with the planning board, to provide a more consolidated area for that common area land. So we've taken what we initially showed the zoning board, and we've revised it to really take their comment to heart. And the green areas are where we're proposing common land to meet the 10% requirement. And so you'll see, we have a continuous area to the south of the site that we're proposing for common land. And then we also have the area that's the parcel 162 Page Street that's at our access road that we're proposing. So we just wanted to share this with the board to make sure that we're taking to heart the condition from ZBA.
This is the common land that was requested or proposed from you to the zoning board?
This is a enhanced and improved version of that. So what they said to us is, you can have your variance and your special permit from us, but we want you to work with the staff, Craig, and bring before the planning board to say, I think, have you done the best that can be done given the site constraints, making it sort of consolidated? And so the idea was, instead of a string, which we had a little bit coming along the front before, we tried to increase the amount and consolidate it so it's usable in some constructive way, depending on what happens with the adjacent sites, where they would presumably be linking things if and as they got developed.
And within the green space that we're proposing to the south, we're really linking. We have 2 isolated vegetated wetlands to the south. And then we also have the wetland replication area to the southeast. And then on sort of to the east of our site, we have an existing bordering vegetated wetland. So we're looking at taking that strip as common land to preserve it, and which we think will be a nice conservation area, and also provide, speaking with the environmental affairs agent, have nice habitat for amphibians and wildlife.
So this would be basically strictly conservation habitat land, but is it land that you're looking to give to the town, or what's the long-term logistics of how that happens?
Your bylaw allows a number of different things, and we're open.
I'm asking,
I think our preference would be that the town would have we'd have an agreement with the town, but we'd continue to hold title.
And the agreement would be?
That we would maintain it in perpetuity. We would do it as a conservation restriction or other agreement with the town, whichever works for you. Right? Correct? Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to hand it off to Maximo, who will go over some of our traffic slides and some of the work we've been doing since we last met with you.
Thanks, Hillary.
Yeah, that's fine. Good afternoon, Maximo Polanco with Langen Engineering, and I'm the traffic engineer that has been working on the development. Mike, if you can go to the next slide. So just to give you, I would say, before we get into the slides, a brief update of what has happened since our last meeting that we were here. We have revised the traffic study, I would say, to address all the comments from the peer reviewer, which basically we've revised it twice. We revised the traffic study to include all the committed developments or recently approved developments along Page Street. And we have revised our mitigation package and basically improvements that we are agreeing to construct as part of our development to mitigate the traffic impacts in the overall area, which I think as well, there are other issues that we had identified that are not being caused by the development that we also have agreed to mitigate as well. So in this slide, we just want to provide you, and on the slide doesn't look pretty well, I would say, or on the screen. Well, basically just wanted to give you a brief summary of what are the actual impacts that our project is going to have based on the existing traffic volumes on the road. So basically, Page Street, just north of our development or north of our driveway, will be increasing, and this is overall cars and trucks, will be increasing the traffic volumes by 6.3%. South of our project, that will be increased by 2.4%. Along Turnpike Street, it's going to be south of our development. The impact is approximately 4.3%. North of Turnpike Street, on that side of our north of our side on Turnpike Street, is going to be 6.5%. And along Pleasant Street, just east and west of Turnpike Street, is basically 1.1% and 0.6%. So, and overall, we're not be increasing these, or the existing traffic will not be increased more than 6% overall, 6.3%. That will be the largest, that which is expected to be on Page Street. That's why I would say our mitigation packages focuses more on Page Street rather than all the other streets. So if we go to the next slide, just wanted to give you a brief breakdown of the increase in truck traffic that we're going to do on a daily basis. On a daily basis, on Page Street, traffic north of our site or north of our proposed driveway will be increased about 4.8%. And south of our site, it will be increased by 0.8%. And minimal truck traffic on Turnpike Street and Pleasant Street, as shown here, which will be 0.2 and 0.8, which is the low number of trucks expected to come from that area to the west. I want to point out that this...
Just to be clear, if they're coming from there, they're probably lost. Right? So we've designed it so the trucks come into and go out of the site from Page Street.
Right.
But it's true, you should sensibly recognize reality, and reality is sometimes folks put in the GPS and it says Turnpike Street because that'll be the property address, and they go the wrong place. And it turns out that's what the number looks like. Sorry.
I should note that these numbers are based on the daily traffic volumes on these roads. If we just look at the specifics, let's call roadway peak hour, which is usually where the rush hours is, where it's from 7 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. Right now, Page Street has an increase or has a number of truck traffic of around 28% in the morning. With our development, that will be increased to 29%. So even though we're showing that there's going to be an increase on a daily basis, in the rush hour where is the moments that you have most traffic in these areas, it'll be increased by 1%. Mainly because these facilities do not operate on a 8 to 5 schedule. They are most a 24-hour operation, and trucks are just scattered throughout the day. So we just want to point that out. And in the afternoon, the increase is basically going to be from 16% to 17%. So again, in the peak hour consideration, which is the worst case of the day, it's basically an increase of 1%. And based on these findings, we've prepared a mitigation package that I'm just going to start. If you can go to the next slide, Mark, please. Talking about, I would say, what we call our largest improvement. So as previously said by Hillary, we've agreed to mill and overlay from Town Line all the way to Turnpike. But in addition to that, in our proposed main entrance, we are going to be widening the road to provide a southbound right turn lane. That way, it's people coming in from the north, which is,
I'm gonna interrupt you for a second. I know the site really well, and it's taking me a little while to get oriented here.
Yeah.
So orient them with Page and things.
so basically, Page is on this side, which is, that will be the north. And then this will be the south, basically this side. So the Town Line or Avon is to the right, and then Page to the left.
And
So-
at Page Street, is that up to the traffic light at Turnpike?
Yes, yes. So basically, we're going to mill and overlay all the way from Town Line, which is basically after the underpass, all the way to Turnpike. But in addition to that, like I said, if you're coming from Page Street, you have a dedicated right turn lane to get into the site seemingly. That way, there's no queue or blocking for people coming from the north. We expect that most of the people will come from the north. That's the most direct access to Route 24, and trucks are likely going just to come, most of them, from that area. But in addition to that, knowing the number of trucks and the number of traffic traveling on Page Street, we are providing a northbound left turn lane. That way, any trucks that will come from the south or from Avon, they will not be just standing on Page Street waiting to get a gap, and they will have a proper gap. And in addition to that, just a couple of days ago, we agreed to install a dynamic flashing signal. The main thing why we are proposing a dynamic signal instead of a full traffic signal is because the volumes do not warrant it, and there is some liability there, and there's obviously engineering judgment that tells us that a signal is not feasible at this location. So basically, this flashing dynamic signal, what we'll do is that once a vehicle will try to exit not only our driveway, but also the driveway on the other side from us, which is the Buck side, something like that. I forgot the name right now. Basically, it will activate, and the mast arm that has, and you don't see it. If you can zoom in a little bit there, Mark, sorry. The mast that we're showing there that has signal will start basically flashing yellow for Page Street and will flash red on our driveways. Basically, just providing warning to people traveling on Page Street that to slow down. But in addition to that, the signage that we have in yellow, which are before and after the intersection, will also flash. So that will tell you that basically there is a truck or a vehicle exiting those driveways, and that basically will warn them. And allowing people to slow down, then we'll provide basically a proper gap, or I would say a safer gap for trucks to get out and not cause an accident here or anything like that. So basically, it'll basically provide full safe access to the site, and not only for our site, then our neighbors as well are going to benefit from that as well. So that is, in a nutshell, kind of like the improvements that we're providing at this intersection. I should say that the stop signs as well are going to be dynamic. So basically, they will start flashing as well, not only the lights on the mast arm, but as well all the signs that we're showing here will start flashing yellow as well. This is obviously a concept that we just wanted to show and to ensure our commitment of providing an improvement such as this. And yeah, I think it's pretty good, I would say. So if we go to the next slide,
Want to
yep,
pause for questions, because you're going to another intersection, right?
yeah, yeah,
Want to pause to see if questions?
yep.
So, number one, we've agreed we're going to do core samples up and down that street,
Yes.
right? So, we're going to do the core samples, and depending on what those core samples say, at this point, you've agreed to mill and overlay, but if there's additional mitigation required, is something we're going to have to talk about as we come down the line, if the roadway it doesn't accept or anything else at that point in time. Not that it would be on you, and I've explained this to you, but maybe it was something we have to talk to the town about, or something going forward in case there is issues with that street that is not going to take long-term use of the trucks. So I want to make sure that the public understood that we are looking at this from the town-wide, and that the long term of this road, that's just not, okay, mill and overlay, but the base is no good, it's not going to do us any good.
And if I could, Mr. Chairman, just for the benefit of members of the public, the developer agrees with that as strongly as it possibly can. We have no interest in spending one penny on milling and overlaying if it's a waste.
I agree.
Right, and
I
so
agree.
we're all on the same page on this one.
Right. And I would like to make sure everybody understands that.
Right.
What we're trying to do is make sure that the roadway infrastructure is going to be able to handle what we're doing. Second thing I'd like to bring up is that we talked the other day that Milton Cat does have a responsibility to do some mill and overlay on that street. You were going to try to contact them. Have you done that at this time?
Yes, 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 yes.
Okay, so I'm sure you're working through, but just at some point in time, you should let us know how that's going to come up.
Yeah, so, and we have already kind of started the conversation with Mark. We advised them that we receive or confirmation from Milton Cat about the limits of their mill and overlay. So we'll start the coordination with Milton Cat and Mark to try to achieve that all at once.
Just so the board understands, we have Milton Cat, as part of their approval process, has to mill and overlay a portion of Page Street. What I'm trying to avoid is have this being done twice, where Milton Cat does it, because they're going to be ahead of this project being done. So I hate to see the street get mill and overlaid, then these guys come in, tear it up, and start to do the whole thing all over again. So what I'm trying to do is work out between the two of them, how do we get that to happen, and it only has to happen once.
Again,
That's the idea with that whole area and what we're doing.
we wholly share the board's view on this, and to be blunt, Milton Cat will too. We're quite confident, because just like us, they want to make sure that they invest money and get a good result, so that in their case, they and in our case, our tenants, it works for them just as much as everybody else who's using the roads.
Right, so those areas there, I think we're all in agreement with, we understand. Does anybody else on the board have any questions as far as that goes?
Yeah, I have a question about the lighting setup that you have there. If I'm understanding this correctly, your dynamic light, you're saying you're not going to use that. Is that a light that would just go on when somebody is exiting the
It's basically actuated by the presence of vehicles. The issue of why we didn't want it
Because
to,
I've seen in some places where, like a large company, they have a light that's set at the end there, and it only works according to the people that are lined up to go out, and otherwise it stays green and people just pass through it normally.
right, so that's what the main thing we wanted to avoid, because people just, regular users of the road will just get accustomed to it, and if they just see it blinking all the time, then they will just keep going at the same speed, they won't
So
reduce.
the light you're proposing is to stop traffic when there's a truck.
It won't stop traffic because
It would stop our traffic.
it'll stop our traffic, but it will slow down traffic regularly on Page Street.
And what's the speed limit on that?
Right now, there's no posted speed limit, but it will be a 30-mile-per-hour
Okay.
road.
Oh, and one other question. You have sidewalks also included on those
We have sidewalks, but we are discussing further that with Mark, since there's some other issues with the sidewalk, so we're discussing further with Mark.
Okay.
You mean, basically, there was a plan for sidewalks, but they're on the wrong side, and we're trying to figure out how we can make it so that it'll end up being continuous going down
Okay,
Page
all
Street.
right.
But right now, it's very discontinuous, so we're trying to make it so it works.
That's right.
Yeah, correct.
Thank you.
That has been discussed
All right.
a lot.
Very-
Just as an open thing, there has been various meetings with the traffic consultants and our traffic consultants, the town employees, Mark and Craig. I've been involved in those and listening in and being a questioner, so just so that you all know, I have been following along with those meetings as part of our review of what's going on, so that just as clear open, I have been there and just trying to discuss that, so. And that's why I'm trying to bring up the stuff that has been already discussed. Go on.
So if we can go to the next slide, Mark, we'd like to show basically the improvements that we're doing on Page Street, which we are, on Turnpike Street, which we are also widening to provide a left turn lane. If you see here, in this case, Pleasant Street is to the right and Central Street or IKEA Way is to the left. So basically, we're widening that segment that we're showing there all the way from the south to the north to provide a left turn lane and basically provide safe access for everybody expected to come from the north. Mostly employees in this case, or 100% employees, since this is just vehicular access. It's not allowed by trucks with our proposed structure that we have right there. The other driveway, it's going to be gated, and it's mainly going to be for emergency access, which we also discussed with the fire department, and they agree, and we'll install a system properly that the fire department will have access to open that gate as necessary. So this, I would say, hasn't changed since our last meeting, and it's basically has been a good improvement overall. Then I would like to go into more of the off-site improvements that we're proposing. So one of the major off-site improvements that we're proposing, Mark, if you go to the next slide, it's basically when we analyze the intersection of Page Street and Central Street, and we analyze how that intersection is operating and how can we make it better. And we discussed this in a couple of meetings, is that we will propose some signal optimization. So basically, it's just evaluating the existing conditions and the expected traffic here. What can we do in terms of traffic operations and how the signal is operating to mitigate the intersection, basically reducing the queues and the overall delay at the intersection, so that the intersection can operate, I would say, with a better traffic flow and seamless. So what you see here in the magenta colors are the expected queues in 2027 without our development. And our proposed optimization, if you see, we are proposing to change the signal operation, basically changing green times or balancing the green times at each approach. That way, the approaches that are heavier, in this case Turnpike Street, will get more green time than Page Street, and as well reducing the queues overall. So the largest queue, as you see here,
Excuse me.
is basically,
Pull it up a little bit, the numbers are difficult to see.
yep. So the largest queue that you can see here, it's the basically, and to orient us to the right, it's going to be Turnpike Street, and the entrance of Target is to the left. So in 2027, which is our horizon year, the southbound left turn queues are expected to basically be over there at the Target, and with our proposed optimization, that will get reduced. I would say pretty much, basically 100 feet as shown there, from 500 to some 595 to 500, as well as the other queues, specifically on Page Street. If you look on Page Street, coming from the westbound, which is in this case the upper right, the existing queues, there are 270 feet that will be reduced to 206, and the through will remain kind of like the same, but it's just giving basically more green time to those approaches and those movements that are critical, the way that the traffic patterns are currently. So we're just taking advantage of that, and we're able to not only mitigate the intersection, but to contain all the queues at the intersection without having any impacts to the other intersections nearby.
So one of the questions I have, and this, I thought about this after our meeting the other day, on Turnpike Street going southbound, you said that you're using that as a double traffic lane or a double turning
Yes,
lane
yes.
in your calculations.
Yes.
The issue there is that coming into Page Street, you don't have 2 lanes.
Yeah.
So the trucks can't be, you can't have 2 trucks making the turn to go in there, so there's almost going to be a fight going in there. So how can you be carrying that as a double turning lane going into Page
No.
Street?
So you're saying the southbound left turn lane here on
That's right, the
Turnpike?
right, the southbound
Right.
left-hand turn.
So-
You're using both lanes coming into Page Street as turning lanes, but there's only a single lane in Page Street at that point in time.
So and that's why if you see the queue, you see that the queue gets extended all the way back.
I see it, yeah, it goes all the way
No,
to top.
the way that we do this, and specifically, that's why we wanted to not only show the queues at the left turn movements or right turn movements, but if you see the queue to the south, which that's basically the 2 lanes that are to go through, are expected to be 143 and 151. So basically, what we're demonstrating here is that within the existing storage for the through lanes, the left turn lanes is not going to block it. Even if you have trucks lined up and backing up there, that 1 lane will be available for people going through, and then they'll be distributed in the
But
2
you're still
lanes.
using you're still using that as a through lane, not as a turning lane.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
I misunderstood it, because I thought
Yeah.
you were trying to say that was a turning lane.
No. Yep. So this is the proposed condition for the morning.
All right.
Yep.
He's got a question.
You said you were going to widen Turnpike Street?
Turnpike Street, yes, on our
You're gonna
driveway.
do both sides, or you're just going to do one side?
On our driveway, it's going to be on our side, because that's where I would say we have the control of most of the right-of-way.
Well, there's a drain tile in that gutter line that stretches from your driveway all the way up past where Simeon's plant used to be, because that area is prone to flooding.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you would,
So
I don't know.
our plans at this moment are, conceptual. Once we move forward to the next part of the process, our roadway plans will be directed and reviewed with Mark, and will be in compliance with all the roadway standards as the town of Stoughton and the state.
well, I just wanted to bring it to your
Yep.
attention, because if you disturb that tile, that road's going to flood over,
Yeah.
and then you just be digging it back up again, so.
No, that's
just
okay.
Bring
No
it to your
worries.
attention, that's all.
Yep, okay, thank you. Next slide. So the same here for the next slide is basically, this is the morning, and the other slide is just the afternoon. So that's our mitigation package to mitigate the impacts to Page and Turnpike Street. So everything in blue is basically the existing or future queues without our development, and everything in orange is our queues, basically. So the same thing, the same outcome, which we are reducing the queues overall at all of the major approaches. Mark, if you continue to the next slide, I would say this is, the latest one, and this is on Turnpike and Central. So our development overall is not going to be adding a lot of traffic here. It's very, very minimal traffic that we are expecting to add. But we reviewed the crash reports provided by the police department and found that there's high crash rates at this intersection. And we identified that the main thing is, even though if you see on Central Street and on Turnpike to the north, there are exclusive left turn lanes, but the intersection itself doesn't provide an exclusive green time for those left turn lanes. So what I'm saying is that when Central Street is green, everybody's green, and even the left turns are green. So people that are wanting to turn left to either go north or south, they have to find just a gap or kind of like force themselves to go into those roads, which causes basically an angle crash. So when we analyze the data supports that 75% of the crashes here are due to that condition. So we have agreed to basically upgrade the signal heads to provide an exclusive left turn lane face that will basically stop everybody and will have green time just for the left turns. That way they are not competing with through traffic to get in. And as well, we'll reprogram the intersection or the controller itself with new signal timing and make sure that that operation can be handled safely.
That's in both directions on Turnpike Street?
Both directions, yeah. And with that, that kind of finalizes, I would say, our mitigation package. So if you have any questions.
So I'd like to just bring up, one of the things that was brought up at our last meeting, and I've talked to you several times about, and so is the traffic pattern. I've had an issue with the traffic pattern as far as everything going in and out of Page Street. And one of the things we discussed at one point in time, or I did, was to bring up, and this intersection is a good photo of it, was to have traffic come off of 24 at Harrison or Central Street, and then come up here and either go into the project or leave the project through this intersection. And going through the analysis that you guys have done and through several meetings, and due to the condition of this intersection, I believe, and also speaking to our own traffic consultant, that the safety issues here would probably outweigh the safety issues of bringing everything out onto Page Street. So my concern has always been the safety and trying to bring the safety in and out of Page Street. Your mitigation with the lights and what we've done at that, what you've done at that intersection of Page Street, I'm much more in agreement with than I was originally. I would still like to see the traffic this way, but if this has the crash data and the other issues that are being brought up by our own consultants, I think that in my own mind, that kind of mitigates it. But I do want to bring up with the board, because it was something that we had talked about, and I'm not sure if it's still in the board's mind or if somebody else wants to bring up. I'm only one person on board. So as far as anybody else, if they have any thoughts on that, I think now is the time to bring that up, so that this project is either going to go forward with the way it's been presented tonight in the traffic pattern that it is, and that's what we're going to ask for, or we're going to ask to see if there's another way around that. I have sat in several meetings, and as I'm not crazy about it, I think this may be the best way that we can get what we want, but I'll just say, I'm one person on the board, so I'd like to have that open discussion now, so we can go through that, if there's anybody else who has any questions about it.
No, I see that as an improvement, and the Page Street area too, since our last meeting, is a big improvement too. And the milling, although, it's a free-for-all at this intersection. I live off of Turnpike Street, and it's a free-for-all if you want to go left,
Yeah.
you know?
So do you believe if we added trucks to that, it would make it worse?
Yeah, but with the left turn lane would help.
Yeah. So does anybody have any issues as far as the direction and the way we've got traffic flowing on the site as it sits right now? Anybody from the board?
I have one question.
Go ahead.
On the non-truck side coming out onto Turnpike Street, did you consider the fact that I don't know how many employees will be driving their personal cars, that the tendency is to leave Turnpike Street and take Maple Street to cut off all the lights and come up onto...
So that's one of the main reasons why the Page Street connection, will be allowed to be used by employees as well, to avoid having that kind of like cut through and not use, like, I would say, town roads for our circulation. So that's why one of the main things why we wanted to propose that light there, because it's not only going to allow trucks to get out, but employees as well.
So employees will be using that as an exit then?
Yes, yes.
And you have no exit, you have, right now, there's no exit, there is property along Maple Street, but there's no exit out onto Maple Street.
No exit.
I see you have a parking area that abuts Maple Street, but that's going to be blocked.
It's going to be blocked, yeah. In the initial concept, we were treating it differently, but I would say since more than 6 months ago, we decided not to.
Do you have anything else on presentation for tonight, as far as anything else going on?
I would say no. Any questions?
Mark, do you have any comments? What I'd like to do is hear from you as far as where they are with all the town boards and the comments and sections and where we are at this point in the project.
Yeah, well, thank you. Very good presentation. You guys did a great job. The engineering plans overall were in very good shape. The engineers do a really good job. We appreciate that as engineers, seeing plans like that, so thank you. So what's going on right now? The project's in front of Conservation Commission, having a very thorough review. They've had multiple meetings in front of Conservation. Our environmental affairs officer did a review letter. We also have a stormwater review letter that the town hired an outside consultant for this particular review because it's such a big project. So we have our consultant environmental partners reviewing the stormwater for the Conservation Commission and for your planning board. Craig issued a review letter himself on some other issues. And the water and sewer superintendent also did a pretty thorough review on obviously the sewer and the water connections. So most of those issues have been addressed. We're close with the stormwater review. Concom's well on their way. I think the big purpose of this meeting tonight, the goal of the meeting tonight, because it could, depending on what direction the board went, it could change a lot of the other reviews, is to discuss that access on the Page Street, make sure the board's in agreement with that, which I personally am. After seeing all the information submitted, I was a little hesitant at first, like I think the rest of the board members may have been, but with the information presented, it makes me feel very comfortable with Page Street. I wouldn't want it another way, especially with our experts, GPI, who have reviewed the plans and have kind of checked everything Maximal is prepared. So I feel comfortable with that. The other issue is the mitigation on Page Street. I mean, not just the access, what they're proposing. I love those dynamic flashing signs. We actually have those on Pleasant Street. Not this extensive. It's not a mass dime like they're proposing, but if you've driven down Pleasant Street lately near, is it Lincoln Street, I think? Right there, we've actually proposed that as a town. So as you approach the stop signs, the dynamic signs flash ahead, people slow down. I've heard rave reviews about that intersection lately. It's a lot more safe. And then the huge issue that I originally had without seeing the numbers was that intersection, Page and Central Street. I was concerned. I'm like, how can we have all these trucks coming out of this property and not increase queues? And it really just comes down to signal optimization, which they've done. And having that ability, I mean, sometimes the answer is no, we can't optimize the signals. And then you have to you got to widen lanes, add different left turn lanes and things like that. But they're able to optimize the signals, which is great. These are all things that they're willing to do and they've proposed to the town. This board hopefully endorses them. If you don't, we can certainly go a different route. The select board also has to endorse these improvements also, too. So after this planning board meeting, the select board are the street commissioners in town. So any improvements to the road, a signal, repaving a road, things like that have to go to the select board. In my experience, obviously, if the planning board supports it and if the applicant's willing to do it, the select board will obviously go along with that. But yeah, overall, I think the project's moving in a great direction. I think we just got some nuts and bolts to deal with after this meeting, pending your board's review.
I have one other comment. Something that was brought up at one of the meetings to me, which I think has alleviated some concern, another set of concerns for me, is that the way that the traffic is being talked about right now, these warehouses are going to be set up as what I consider, I guess, a first stop warehouse or whatever. So there's an occupancy level based upon the type of warehouse that it is. So instead of this being a small truck warehouse or what they consider a last stop warehouse where you'd have a lot of little trucks going out in the neighborhoods, this is going to be set up and occupied, and the occupancy is going to be set for a first stop warehouse or a first stop distribution center. One of the items I'm going to propose as far as our order of conditions is going to be that if the occupancy changes to a different type of warehouse, that they would have to come back before us on the site plan review in order to deal with that, because that's going to cause different traffic counts, it's going to cause different types of truck traffic and that type of stuff in the area. So one of the things we're going to ask as far as us is to go through that. But this should also alleviate with the public what they're thinking for trucks. This is also going to be some larger trucks. It's not going to be the smaller types of trucks that are going to spin out into the neighborhood. So that is one of the things that I learned going through the process, and we will get very specific into the type of occupancy that these buildings are going to have as far as what they're going to go in going forward. So to try to help out, mitigate and steps going forward. The other thing we want to talk about is traffic, because they've talked about very specific traffic counts in the 550 type of truck trips a day, 250 somewhat out, 250 somewhat in. So we're going to talk about having long-term monitoring of the traffic and long-term monitoring of the truck counts in the areas to make sure that it's following along with what they're doing going forward. So if something changes, that's another thing that would trigger them to come back before us as a board and as a town. All right, at this point in time, if there's no other questions, yes, go ahead.
I have a general question to whomever in your team can answer this. Have you given any thought to using cool pavements to reduce heat islands? You have a large square footage of pavement, typically black. There are other grades of color that will reduce that. And in a corollary question, roofing materials that are reflective to reduce the heat sink. Any thoughts?
So, does this mic work?
Yeah.
So we use TPO, Tyler Mortis with Brookfield. So Brookfield
He's the guy
is,
we all work for.
so Brookfield is one of the largest renewable energy operators globally, actually. So all of these warehouses will have the ability to put solar on the roof, and we typically put solar on almost all of our warehouses. We also have white TPO roofs, and we'll also have islands in the employee parking areas. But I guess what we've found based on our experience in the porous pavement, that typically deteriorates much quicker, and you end up having to replace it over and over again. And it's actually, what we've done in the past is we've actually thought it's worse for the environment, because if you have to replace it every 2 years, all of a sudden you're driving trucks, you're picking it up, you're using all this machinery. So what we try to do is, in addition to that, all these buildings will also be LEED certified. So those are kind of some of the ways we try to mitigate all those things.
Has there been any thoughts using a reflective coating on the asphalt paving to reduce the heat islands?
We can definitely look at that. I haven't heard about that in the past, but
Well,
that's very
basically, we're
interesting.
building a spot that's equivalent to several city blocks. And we know in cities, heat islands are a major issue for everyone concerned. I think this is something that a project of this magnitude and square footage acreage with that much asphalt should be seriously considered.
Absolutely. We'll look into it, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else on the board?
Just a comment from what you were discussing about, if there's a computer company in there and there's vans going in and out, those vans obviously would have access from Turnpike Street, because they would be considered, passenger-type vans, right?
The Turnpike Street device has got an 8-foot clearance. Yeah,
But my point is that if that would be a different occupancy than what they're going for right now.
Right,
So it'll be a
exactly.
change of use or change of occupancy, so therefore,
Exactly.
that would get triggered to a building permit, which would trigger to us.
Yep.
And if I could, Mr. Chairman, there's Brookfield's actual business intentions, but it's not your role to just trust our say-so. If you look at the site plan, the types of loading docks we've chosen are consistent with the type of use we are planning on doing. So realistically, if we were going to make this into a last-mile facility, we'd have to change a lot of the loading dock configurations to be more appropriate for that kind of use. So we'd be back in front of you anyway.
At this time, I'd like to open up to the public. If anybody from the public would like to speak, come on up and state your name and move on.
Sorry.
Good evening. My name's Richard Parolin. I live on Glen Echo Boulevard.
Sorry, Richard who?
Parolin.
Okay.
I live on Glen Echo Boulevard, Precinct 1 member, former planning board member, present Board of Health. A little history up in the area. We've been trying to protect all the houses, single-family homes, Turnpike Street, Pleasant Street, Page Street, all that area. Years ago, when they put in the industrial park, they put in a back road. They get permission to put in a back road. That was restricted for cars only. Trucks were all supposed to come up through the industrial park. Now they've taken down the gates, trucks go through there, they ignore it. The C&D facility down the street, we put a restriction on. All trucks have to come through the industrial park, which is good. Most of them do. We do get a few that come in through Page Street. Can we look into restricting the trucks and having them come into the Avon Industrial Park and in? It's an easy off 24. They redid the whole new section at the other end. They can come right down and right into this industrial park. This will protect all the single-family homes in the whole area, because we have so much traffic. I know they did a traffic study in last February. It's a big change since last February to what we got now. We got them backing up. Sometimes they back up from Central Street all the way down to the high-tension wires. Everyone knows where that is, past the Hansons and down to the high-tension. Going up the other way, that gets backed up. The water, I know it's conservation, but they're gonna be putting some water down there. I believe you've all got a map I had drawn out for the area with the water problems down. The water affects Glen Echo Boulevard, Pleasant Street, Turnpike Street. As one of the gentlemen said, it floods on Turnpike Street. That water can't go anyplace. Any more water going in there just backs up all the way down Pleasant Street over to the Glen Echo area, which affects myself. I have 2 pumps. My neighbor has 2 pumps. Bishop's Landing and the houses on Pleasant Street on the other side of me, we all have a lot of water. So if anything can be done to help protect us from water and try to protect us with the traffic of the trucks. They're talking 1-2%. 1% of 100 is 1 truck. 1% of 500 is 5 trucks. So I don't know what the percentages mean, how the calculations were, but this has got to all be taken into consideration. There's too many trucks there now, and there's a lot of problems, and they go up that old Maple Street, and sometimes I'm coming back from the dump, and it's dangerous, very dangerous when a truck comes up. I can imagine when one comes either way. Thank you. I appreciate any consideration. Have a good night.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else from the public at this point in time? Very good. I'm anticipating you're going to ask for a continuance.
Well, I don't think it would work out too well if I asked for a vote, so I think I'm going to go for the continuance. Yes, Mr. Chairman, we'd like a continuance. As I understand it, you may have a fairly full agenda, I believe, at your next scheduled meeting on the 9th.
We do.
And so if we could, Mr. Chairman, we'd like to ask for a continuance to your following hearing, which is the 23rd, I presume.
Yeah, we're okay? Yes.
Does that work?
Works on our agenda, yes.
We only have 1 item on the agenda so far for that date.
Let's go for that then. Can I have a motion to accept that continuance?
So made.
All in favor? We'll see you on the 23rd of February.
I'll get you a confirmatory letter tomorrow. Thank you all very, very much. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda. Continued public hearing will be held at the Great Hall, Town Hall, 3rd floor, 10 Pearl Street, Stoughton, Mass. By Stoughton Planning Board on Thursday, October 27th at 7 p.m. We got the wrong date on here? Well, this is the continued from that date. Okay. Petition to applicant Walnut Tree Service, 1518 Washington Street, Stoughton, Mass. On behalf of owner Stephen Goulstein, 1520 Washington Street, Stoughton, Mass. And represented by Barry R. Crimmins, Esquire, Law Offices of Barry R. Crimmins, PC, 909 Washington Street, Stoughton, Mass. For site plan approval under section 10.6 of the change of use, include outdoor storage of commercial vehicles and equipment and construction of 5 parking spaces at the property identified as 1791 Washington Street, further identified Assessors Plan Number 61, Lot 6, located on General Business Zoning District, and any other relief which may be required relative thereto. Mr. Crimmins, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Good evening. Happy New Year, everybody. For the record, Attorney Barry R. Crimmins of 909 Washington Street in Stoughton, here on behalf of the applicant, Walnut Tree Service, for the continued public hearing on their site plan approval application for the property at 1791 Washington Street. I believe all of the members were here at our first hearing back in October, with, I think, the possible exception of Mr. Terry. At that time, well, let me first introduce the folks who are here with me. To my left, to your right, is John Marchand, who is our project engineer with Fallon Engineering. Also here tonight is my client, Mr. Michael Gomes of Walnut Tree Service, and also with me this evening is my associate attorney, Evan Lewis. So we appeared before you back in October for the first public hearing on this application. This is a matter that we previously obtained a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals for accessory outside storage of construction equipment and raw materials. Basically, what my client is looking to do, most, if not all of you, I'm sure, are familiar with their current location at 1518 Washington Street, down next to Mario's Roofing. That operation is intended to remain at that location. We are not relocating the operation to this location. Rather, we're cutting out a small portion of the operation, which is basically the chipping operation associated with their tree removal. So that will occur in the back of the site. The site previously housed a single-family residence that you see at the front. That is being converted into a small office slash employee break room type of location. This is not the type of operation where customers come to the site, but rather the employees come to the site. The trucks basically come and go as far as dropping off the logs and the chipping operation. There'll be minimal storage of equipment overnight. The equipment will, again, largely continue to be stored at the current operation, at the current location, I should say, down the street. So this is really designed to house, again, the chipping operation associated with the business. Since the time of that meeting in October, John prepared several revisions to the site plan that were requested by both the members of the board as well as by Assistant Town Engineer Craig Horsfall. In the meantime, those revisions that I'll turn it over to John momentarily so he can highlight what those revisions consisted of. Those revisions were submitted to the town engineer, Mr. Tisdale, who completed the second technical review memo on behalf of the board dated January 25. My apologies. I thought I heard something. So Mark completed the second technical review memo yesterday. He was good enough to provide us with a copy of that. You'll see from his technical review memo that I believe most, if not all, of the original comments in Craig's first technical review memo are indicated as having been either satisfactorily addressed or it's being recommended that they be conditions of approval. So with that, Mr. Chairman, if I could turn it over to John Marchand from Fallon Engineering, and John can sort of go through what the changes were to the site plan since we were before you in October.
Thank you, Barry. John Marchand from Farland Corp., the civil engineers for the project. I'd say the most significant changes to the site plan since the October meeting are that we relocated the 4 proposed parking spaces that had previously been proposed on the north side of the existing building to the rear of the site. We've also revised our stormwater calcs to reflect the NOAA rainfall frequencies, and that resulted in additional stormwater chambers being required. So those were added to the stormwater system in the rear of the site. And we've also added a privacy fence just to the east of the gravel area behind the house to screen the use. A lot of the other, there were 21 comments on the initial technical review letter. We could go through those, but I think that addresses kind of the gist of the
Privacy
changes to the site
fences
plan.
around the entire property, or just on one side, I forget how you did that.
It would just be on the side facing Washington Street.
So you will not have you don't have fencing in the entire property?
No.
So what are we doing for a buffer around the other 3 sides where you're going to be doing the operations back there?
Right now, there's a stone retaining wall. You can kind of see it around the perimeter of.
No, I see the stone retaining wall, but, so normally on commercial sites, what we've been asked and requiring, and I thought that was brought up at the last meeting, was a PVC fence that would surround the property. It's been something that's been requested on most of the commercial sites in the area in order to be able to mitigate that against residential sites and other properties that are in the area. So is there a reason that we wouldn't have requested that in this particular instance?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I think the thinking was the nature of the site is such that to the rear, you have the existing railroad bed. To the right or north, in the rear, they have the Sin Oil facility, which is at a considerably different elevation. The Hinchcliffe's property, and I know they're here tonight as well, so they can speak to any concerns that they may have to our immediate right. And then on the left-hand side, the southern side, is that driveway that leads out to the Topman property in the rear. So not really sure what utility would be gained by fencing the site, because not sure who is going to be seeing anything. The fencing to the front to screen the operation from view from the street was a condition of approval in the zoning board special permit, so we are providing that. But in terms of fencing the entire perimeter of the site, I don't know that any benefit would be gained from doing that.
Except it has been an ongoing part of our plan review and what we expect to have for all commercial sites. And I don't know why we would change that at this point in time, but it is something, and I mean, it's something you're asking for that's beyond, outside of our design parameters.
Yeah, I just think the nature of the site and the particular abutters, I think every site kind of stands on its own, and I think in this particular site, I just don't see that.
No, but you do have a residential site right next door to you.
I understand.
Yep.
And
Okay.
they, we've met with the Hinchcliffes, and again, I don't want to speak for them. They can address any concerns that they may have.
Okay. We'll look into that when they get there. Mark?
Thank you. Mr. Crimmins is correct. All the technical review comments have been satisfactorily addressed. Craig had 20-some-odd comments. Most of them were stormwater-related, things of that nature. They have been addressed. I was going to mention the ZBA condition about the fence screening the use from the road. He already did. They've added that fence, that stockade fence on the plans. There is a waiver from the developmental impact statement,
What type of fence they provided there?
8-foot stockade fence, right?
Wood stockade fence?
Vinyl. I think
Vinyl PVC, white
proposed
PVC?
6 foot.
I thought the plan said 8. Zoom in. No, you're right, 6.
So that fence is going to be back at that location, Mark, not out at the street?
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, continue on.
Okay. The last remaining thing there's 2 remaining things for the board to consider on the letter. One is the waiver. You may have done this, correct me if I'm wrong, I wasn't here at the last meeting. The waiver from the developmental impact statement for this particular
Waiver of what?
waiver for the developmental impact statement.
Yep.
I would suggest that that's a proper waiver for this type of project. Minimal traffic concerns and things of that nature. All the environmental issues have been addressed. And then the last remaining issue, as you know, Dan, is the encroachment issue for the driveway on the abutting property. Craig had a comment in his letter about that the board needs to kind of review that and address it. To try to help out the issue, I was kind of unsure of how that should be addressed also, so I reached out to town council to get their opinion on a driveway encroachment on our project. Speaking with town council, it was his opinion, again, it is an opinion, but our town's council said if the driveway on the abutting property does not impact our use or our access to our use or our project, and is not a physical structure like a building, then it's not something that this board needs to resolve. It's really a private issue amongst 2 civil property owners. So under site plan review, that was his recommendation. For example, if the driveway was combining with our driveway and we're combining access, it would impact our project. That'd be a different situation. But again, that's up to your board to decide. That was the input I got from our town council, and that was kind of the last remaining issue that your board probably should discuss, in my opinion.
So, at the last meeting, we had asked that you meet with the owners and try to come up with a solution and/or an easement to that driveway. Has that been done, or where are you with that at this point?
So I spoke to the owner. Again, my client is a tenant at this site, is not the owner of the property. The owner, Mr. Goulston, was not inclined to grant an easement to the Hinchlifs. He's aware of the situation. It's a situation that's been allowed to exist. He has no issue with it. Creating an easement raises a whole host of other legal issues between the parties that quite frankly, he does not want to get involved with. And again, as Mr. Tisdale said, and as you can see, it's a small bump out where the Hinchlifs park their vehicles on the Goulston property that they've done for some time. He has no issue with it. He's not going to require that they stop doing it. But again, that's largely between, if not exclusively, between Mr. Goulston and the Hinchlifs.
Okay. I have a different opinion because it's right now, it's encroachment being used, so it's at this point in time, so it comes under, it's also shown in our drawings as an encroachment to the property, so I just have a different opinion of what it is. I'd like to hear from the owners of the property. Are they here tonight or not? No, okay. And so you haven't spoken to them at all, or you have spoken?
No, I indicated I have spoken to Mr. Goulston.
Not to the Goulston, I'm sorry, to the neighbor's property, are those?
Oh, they're here.
Okay. Have you spoken to the Goulstein? I'm sorry, could you just come up and introduce yourselves?
So Diane Henschliff, we're 1781 Washington Street. We purchased the home, I think it was 27 years ago, so we have had use of that. We were made aware when we purchased of the little bump out. The original owners were the Moores. They had given that to the original owners so they could back their car, our garages under house garage. allowed them to back their car out. We've been using it for 27 years. We have no problem whatsoever with Walnut Tree doing what they're doing. We did a walkthrough for the parking where it was originally proposed, did not make sense at all. We were all in agreement with that. Where it will be now, we're perfectly fine with. We're obviously understanding you guys have your rules with the town. We're not looking for a fence, like we live here. It's always been wide open. They've planted trees. There is gonna be the fence across. Personally, we're fine with it. I don't know what the benefit would be to telling us not to use our driveway that we've been using for 27 years for anybody.
Okay.
Like, we don't have a problem with it. Honestly, we have 5 cars in our yard. That's our driveway. They're fine with it. We've spoken with Mike. We've walked it with Barry and Mike. Mr. Goulston, we've just never had the pleasure of meeting. We're okay with that. He doesn't seem to, he's not coming to us with a problem. We're not coming to him with a problem. There was a little bit of a, in the beginning, the amount of our driveway that was encroached, we were made aware when we purchased our home of the curve. We did live with David Moore as our neighbor. That was challenging within itself for many reasons. At any time, we told him, if you want it, take it. We didn't care in the beginning. He didn't want to take it, so for 27 years, we've used it. As far as everything that's proposed, a fence down the side is really not something we're looking for. Obviously, we don't make the rules, but that makes it a little more utilitarian. We're looking more, it's just wide open. We like that.
Okay.
If we all agree, we're all fine with it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there any questions on the board?
Is there an issue, safety-wise, where you have a residence abutting a commercial property where you know, would be to your benefit to put a fence up? I mean, is there an issue here that we should look at, or?
I mean, normally that's why we require a fence between a commercial property and a
I mean,
residential
this
property.
is big machinery that's going to be over there, and that is a residence right there.
Yeah.
And the other question I have is, I haven't looked at the site, but is there absolutely no vegetation all the way in the abutting properties, all the way around the property, or? I mean, over on the St. James side, are there big trees running along there, or along the backside of there? Is there native vegetation there?
Yeah, so to the, I guess it'd be the west of the property, the rear of the site, that is a wooded,
The sign is a wooded area?
yeah, the railroad property. And then on the south, you can see the driveway, it kind of runs right along the property line. There's some woods on to the south. There's some open field and
Right,
woods.
I just, usually you kind of try to depict that so we get an idea.
Well, he's showing it on the plans up there now.
Yep, and we do have some of the large trees that are there
Okay, I
on
see
the
that,
south side of the,
All right.
And then they get the landscaping out front. Mark, can you just move the plan up a little bit, please? So they're adding in they're adding in what's going on in the front and that landscaping that's there.
correct.
What size are the trees that's along your neighbor's driveway? What size are those, just bushes or those trees that you got coming up? You got 5.
Between the driveways, I believe those
Yeah,
are
between the
bushes.
driveways. You have 5 plants depicted there. I just can't see in the drawing what they are.
Yeah, those are hydrangeas,
So they're just small plants.
yeah. We have one tree proposed, that's the maple up front. Then we have the row of cypress along the,
Excuse me?
there's a row of proposed cypress along the
Right there, yeah.
top of that wall.
Anybody else on the board?
The neighbors have no issue, no harm, no foul, but if they go to sell their house, is that gonna create any kind of an issue with?
Well, we're not creating an easement, we're saying that, or basically, we're saying it exists. Again, I have a different opinion than the attorneys do, so I can only say what's on the drawings, what's been the previous history of what we've done with the planning board is when there's an encroachment, is to repair the encroachment. Right now, they don't have an issue, and the neighbors don't have an issue. And there is, there's a long-standing encroachment that they could claim on. So at this point in time, their opinion, the attorney's opinion to the town is kind of where it's stating right now. So as far as the protection of the neighbors, I agree. There should be, we've talked about it before, about protecting residential properties. We actually have a couple of projects in front of us right now about putting up fencing and other protection that's being required by the building department and other departments just for this factor of having commercial properties adjacent to residential properties for what we could have concerns about safety issues down the road. If we did end up, requiring to put a fence, that's gonna end up blocking off her driveway. I mean, they could bring the fence and bring it around, but it will create something that the neighbor isn't looking for, but again, we're looking at long-term as far as what that goes. That's just, again, I'm just one person speaking of the board. I agree with your assertion, but also, trying to take into account what the neighbors, what they're actually wanting and what's actually being given in that area, so I am trying to take that into account also. It would be, sure.
So for our property is completely fenced in. So for us as a safety issue, we don't see it that way because when you pull in our driveway, our entire backyard is completely fenced in.
But you're not fenced in where your driveway is coming onto that.
Well, just our driveway. We got our car and we go in the house, so we
Yep.
can go in the backyard through the gate of our fence. So
there's an existing fence around your property line, up
Yep.
against theirs, down to your driveway?
yes.
Okay.
And they've actually planted some trees there for us for privacy as well. I think it was required at one of the meetings, but they did do that. So on the safety level for us, we don't see that as a problem because when we're out in our backyard, we're fenced in. Our children are grown, so we're not worried about our kids, but when they were younger, if they were in the driveway, we were with them, even with our neighbor.
Perhaps a solution would be to run a chain link fence on your property down along the side there, just for safety issues. I'm just
She says she
concerned.
does have a fence there right now.
But her fence,
I don't
but where the
see the
driveway comes down.
necessitation of a fence down the driveway. I know you're looking at it differently in long-term, but we live there, and this works for us and our backyard, where our safety concerns would be for our family, our children, grandchildren, whatever, it would be our backyard, and it's always been completely fenced in.
What type of fence is there, 6-foot stockade fence back there?
Yes.
Okay.
And then across the back, there is chain link, which Sin Environmental, it was already existing, and then they replaced some fencing on the other side for us.
I'm just concerned personally that, there's no safety barrier between the end of your driveway coming down along towards the street. Whether they decided to put a fence on their own property, just as a safety feature, that's
Coming
my
out of our driveway onto Washington Street? Is that
Well,
what
they could
you're-
run a fence down along their, right along their driveway if they wanted to. That would give a safety feature
Well,
so
their
that.
driveway's on the opposite side. Or are you talking where they're gonna be bringing it's not actually,
Anywhere along here, they could run a fence. It wouldn't have to be like a 6-foot vinyl fence or anything, even a 4-foot, like you do for a pool or something, to me, that's a concern. But if if the board feels that we're out of bounds on this, that's fine too.
it's not something we're looking for. Compromise could be a greenery fence. We're not looking for a fence next to our driveway where we get out of our car and there's a fence here and a house. It's just a little boxing in. We're not looking for that. If there had to be something, if a compromise could be a lower hedge type, something.
Do we have a plan that shows her property Yeah, the plot size of her property. That one there, okay. So right now, you have a fence that's running along your back property line, up along where the trees are right now on the south side. And then where does the fence stop? Right there where the driveway ends?
When you, right where the curve and the driveway is, right across with this steps that go up into our backyard, that's completely fenced in. So the fence actually touches our house.
Yep.
Goes all the way to the back of our property, and it's completely fenced in. So that wall where, there is a stone wall there, and they've added some trees there for us, the fence is right there.
Well, the backyard is completely fenced. The front
Completely.
yard, and the front yard and that whole area is just completely open.
Well, yes, the front yard is open. But across the front of our house, over towards where Sin Environmental is, we do have fencing there that squares off our property. So there is chain link down the right side and across the back that was existing from Sin Environmental.
I think if our consensus is that commercial properties be fenced in, that with this driveway issue, that there should be some type of solution to how you put a fence from that part of their driveway down to the front, so that there's no possible people moving in and out of that area. And it is a quite simple solution,
But you're saying you don't believe we need to have a 6-foot high or even a...
No, even like you do a 4-foot fence, a 4-foot chain link fence running in your property, and giving on the other side of the driveway, so they continue to have the driveway.
Can I say one thing?
Sure.
The reason I don't want the fence is mainly because on one side of the house where our driveway comes up, we have bushes.
Right.
So in the winter, when it's time to snow blow, I'd be able to snow blow into the Moore's yard. Now that that's there, I've already talked to Mike. I snow blow into there, he pushes it all back into the woods. If we put a fence there, we put bushes there, it's not gonna work. I have nowhere to throw my snow.
But the town has a thing about commercial properties being
Well,
fenced in.
it's not a part of the bylaw, it's part of our design standards and what we normally do. But, I mean, we've made exceptions in the past on, different types of site plan reviews, and this one has its own issues, so. You bringing up a Google shot, or what are you doing?
Yeah, I was going to do the street view if you're all right with it.
I'm good for it, go ahead.
All right.
Okay, you think you can
I
handle that?
can pull
one?
this off.
You think you can pull this off? I was gonna ask you for that, but I don't know if you're that technically savvy.
All right, where are we?
Google Maps might be better,
Listen, now you're getting a little crazy over there, right? All right. So what's the address of this again?
How's that? Look at that.
So this is our house.
That's the subject property with the circular drive. The Hinchcliff's house is the blue house to the right. You go up a little further, Mark.
There is a row of hedges that, am I seeing that right?
Up, come back. Yeah.
But it's on their side of their driveway, I get you.
Can you try
But
to
now
line it up, like
presently-
right opposite the driveway access area? Yeah, right about there, that's
Well, that
good.
area is gonna change at this point in time, because you're gonna have a grassed area between their driveway and where the plan looks to me, anyway. There's going to be a grassed area between that driveway and where the access driveway for their new access driveway is gonna be, am I
Right,
correct?
and some rhododendrons and
You're ripping up a whole bunch of asphalt there.
You're tearing that out, and you're creating a grassed-in area. So what we're trying to say, and it's gonna look differently than it looks now. Presently, there's going to be a grassed area, so you're concerned about snow blowing into their driveway. You'll be snow blowing into a grassed area, you'll never make their driveway. So, in the future, the way it's gonna be set up, except for the area down by where your cars are gonna be coming in and out.
But even that shows an area of plantings at the end of the driveway.
Right. Oh, it's just a small area of plantings, right? Okay.
I mean, it's quite different the way it is right there as opposed to how it's going to be designed.
Right, because if you go back to the plan, there's going to be an area of grass, and I think what Paul was trying to say is that if we put fence down that area of grass, doesn't necessarily have to be on the property line, but just some 4-foot fence, just for a safety issue. And that was his only concern. Right now, it's being used in, what type of fashion is it being used in right now? Just the same trucks going in and out that are there presently?
Right. You can kind of see the different coloration where the Hinchcliff's driveway immediately to the left of their row of shrubbery there,
Right.
that they use to get to the property, and then to the left of that, where the hand or the arrow is the area that we will be using to access the rear of the property.
You're going to be to the left of that again, Barry. There's an area of grassed-in
Right.
area there.
Right,
Right. That's all I'm trying to say.
yep.
So what Paul was trying to say, it's in that area, grassed-in area, wouldn't it just be prudent to put something along that line for truck access? And I understand the way you live right now, it's fine. We're looking at, what's happening 10 years from now. When owners change,
But
people
God
change.
forbid that some kid does run over there, and suddenly there's an issue like, why wasn't there a fence there, or some type of a barrier,
Then you'd have to
Excuse me?
come across the front of the commercial property as well, because a kid could just go around the end of the fence and
Yeah,
he's in
it could
that
be,
area.
it could be either way. Okay. So, at this point in time, the only issue we have really is that issue and giving up on the fence issue. So, it's a matter of what the board would like at this point in time and how they would want to put any type of conditions on this property as far as going forward, or do we want another plan that's showing something going forward? It's up to the whole board.
I have no issue because the abutter has no issue.
Okay?
I don't agree.
Okay. So it appears right now, the way that the majority of the board looks like, it looks like we're not going to require the fence at this point in time. We would recommend it, but it's not going to be a requirement in that area. Where we have a majority that doesn't oppose it. So Mark, is there any other types of restriction or anything else, or are we waiting for anything else from them to be able to create a decision at this point in time?
Do we have to give a waiver on the environmental impact?
We have to vote on that waiver if we're going to
Right.
go forward, but other than, we'll have to do a separate vote on that.
Yep.
And then we'll have to do a separate vote on the order of conditions once we've got them created, right?
Right, so you could just vote to close this. We could prepare the decision for your future endorsement.
And
that
then
what
we can
you're
prepare a decision based upon what we are right now.
Right.
There's no changes to these drawings that need to be made at this point from where we are with everything, okay? So I guess the first thing is we need to, I need to hear a motion for, I got to get to the section, excuse me for a second. We don't have the waiver isn't in here, isn't it requested in here, in this, Mark? I mean, it's not in this wording here, I don't see the waiver in the wording.
Dan, are you looking for the section number on that waiver?
Yeah, I'm looking, for this. I mean, I see section 10.6 with change of use, but I'm looking for the section number for the waiver.
10.6.10 is the development impact report provision. So it would be a waiver of that.
I need a
provision.
motion to waive the requirement under section 10.6.10 for the requirement for a developmental impact statement for this project.
So made.
Do I have a second? All in favor of that?
Aye.
Okay, so that waiver's been granted. I need a second motion now for site plan approval per the drawings that we have. And with the order of conditions, they're going to be coming up based upon those plans. And we don't have any changes that we've agreed to at this point in time for those plans, so it will be as they are at this point in time. Do I hear a motion for that?
So made.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we have 3 ayes and 2 opposed. No, I didn't say aye. I said 3 ayes and 2 opposed. So you have a majority, so that site plan is granted the way it is right now.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay? So you guys are set. We'll create an order of conditions, which we'll sign at our next meeting. You don't have to be here, or we'll sign between now and then. Once it's signed, Mr. Crimmins will be notified of that, and then you guys can continue on with your project. So you guys are set at this point in time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
I appreciate everybody working together on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, thank you, members of the board, and thank you, Mr. Tisdale.
So you have a new associate, Barry. Are we going to have him in front of us now? You have a new associate. Are we going to have him in front of us now? Okay.
So when they sell the property, they should just sell it to Boylston, and then it can be all commercial.
All right, so moving on to general business. We have 3 sets of meeting minutes that we need to review and approve or whatever. So September 22nd would be our first one. Has everybody had a chance to review them, or do you want to
Yeah.
review them now?
I went through them. I
Okay.
don't see any issues.
Have these been updated, Pam, per your comments?
The meeting on September 22nd,
Yes.
I was not the acting planner, so I was not at that meeting, so I
Okay.
had no comments on that one. The minutes from October 27th, what you have in front of you has all of the changes that I had suggested.
Okay.
The minutes from November 10th, I do have a couple of small comments.
Okay, so let's go through the 22nd one first, and then we'll go on to the next 2. Thank you very much for the update, Pam. Anybody else have any issues? I have no issues with that meeting. Anybody else? Can I have a motion to accept the meeting minutes for Thursday, September 22nd?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, October 27th, 2022, draft number 2. Anybody have any comments on October 22nd, 27th? You're... Okay. Anybody else have any comments? Can I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from October 27th?
So made.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Pam, thank you for the review of that. I did see you pick your comments on that.
Okay,
And you have some comments on November 10th?
just a couple. And I wanted to thank Karen for doing those minutes from the October meeting, because that was the one where we had no recording, so that was a lot of work. Yeah, that was a lot. I gave her 26 pages of my notes, too. So on the November 10th meeting, I had nothing on the first and second page. The third page, I was just questioning, I didn't know whether or not this was a replication. You had, under the bullet points, you had 2 monument signs, and then later you just had monument signs. So I didn't know if there were different signs. So we probably only need the first one that says 2 monument signs. So that was one comment. And then on page 4, my notes had said, we were actually talking about this, this tonight. My notes said around the 3rd paragraph, when we were talking about the different calculations, I had a question mark. I thought that they had said they were proposing 333 trees that would perform well, and most trees would be moved from the access area and the perimeter. And then I had the comment, there's usually a special permit to take out and replace the trees. So that was something from my notes that I don't know if anybody else had a similar. Yeah, that's what I had.
Okay, so I'm mistaken, because I did say 500, and they agreed with me tonight.
Yeah, so because I hadn't gotten to discuss it with everybody else, I wanted to make sure what I wrote was correct, but
You had 300 trees, too?
I had 333. And then you had said it's usually a special permit to take out and replace the trees.
Correct.
So I didn't know if we should just add that language into the minutes.
What I need to look at, Pam, yeah, we should say that they made the comment it was a special permit requirement. I need to look at the zoning code and find out what it is, so we can get that number. I'd like to just have that part of the record, so we know what that is, because if there is another special permit they need to apply for, we should get that application going now, while they're in the process.
Okay, so as far as the minutes are concerned, though, should we just?
I would just make the
put that wording?
comment that, it was made that may be a special permit requirement for removal of the trees.
May need special permit, okay. All right, and then separate from that, we'll look into that and see if we need to get something else going, another application going. Okay, and then on the next page, page 5, I added it at the bottom, but my notes said, Dan Kelly said he needs to read the original decision with the caveat that the town would use the function hall for the hotel.
Yep.
Mr. Patel stated that the hotel has small meeting rooms for 25 people if the town needs them. So just because there was that stipulation before, I thought that should be included in the
It should be
minutes.
included in there, yes.
Okay. And then the only other comment that I had was on the last page. We know that Mr. Terry was not able to watch the meeting because there was no video. So I just changed that to Mr. Terry explained that he reviewed the file for the meeting and filled out the signed the form stating that he reviewed the file again. So just changing watched to reviewed file. And that was all that I had for comments.
The, I just wanted to be sure we had the comments from Mr. Atkins in there, and we did, so that's good. The other thing, there was a comment, there was a comment by me, and I don't see it in here, and it was also backed up, that they would be able to access these plans online, and we don't have that ability right now. So I think that comment needs to at least be put in there that I did make it, but I'm not sure how we want to go forward with that now, because it's not what we can do at this point in time.
I don't know, can you prove them based on just having Karen just?
Yeah, we can approve the meeting just upon her making the
So, but I mean,
change.
with that language, you can just review it again.
She can send it to me to
and get
look at.
your exact wording.
Okay, so can we approve the meeting minutes for November 10th with the discussion of the changes that we've just discussed going forward? Have a motion for that effect?
So made.
Second? All approved?
Aye.
All right, I have no other business at this point in time. Is anybody else?
I just want to, I wanted to give an update, but after you're done.
Just saying, the next meeting's February 9?
I lost it. Yes, we are meeting on February 9th and then February 23rd. And it's okay to give my little update now?
Go ahead, you're all set.
I just wanted to let people know that last week I did submit the MBTA Communities Action Plan. That was due by the end of January. And what that does is, once that's approved, that makes us keep our eligibility for any fiscal year '24 grants, like MassWorks and things like that. And then we have until December 31st, 2024, to actually achieve our full district compliance. We don't need that long. I'm already working with Larry Langlois, our GIS manager, to work on what's called the compliance model. And that just, he uses the layers in GIS and allows us to verify compliance by making sure we meet requirements for the district size and location, the multifamily unit capacity, gross density, and a few other benchmarks. So we're working on that. So I actually think we'll probably be done in a few months with that. If there's anything missing from that action plan that I submitted, they basically just contact us, tell me what we're missing, and then, if I need to add something, I will. But I just wanted to let you know that that's done. And the only other thing was, I think I mentioned this to you, Dan, that Charlotte Mullen, the chair of the Disability Commission, had said that they hadn't been active for a few years, but she wanted to touch base with the planning board to see how we could work together on, any projects that had a disability component. So you had said that we could invite her to a future meeting, so I just wanted to know if you knew when you wanted to invite her.
Now, the 23rd is still light, correct? Oh, we just got that one added in, right?
So the 23rd is the Hampton Inn, now Stoughton Logistics, and there's one other project that's trying to get on the agenda for that. I don't know if they'll make it or not. So, I mean, I think it would be all right if we went into the beginning of March with that.
Let's try to put her into the first meeting in March.
So like March 9th, the first meeting in March. All right, so I'll ask her if that's something that works for her. And then maybe we could just put her at the beginning of the agenda. I think it would just be like a 5-minute thing that we could talk to her. Okay, I'm all set. Thanks.
Have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, good night, everyone.